top of the morning. And it's the morning. You don't know when I recorded this, assholes. You don't know what time it is. You don't have the metadata. Somebody explain to you idiots what metadata is. All right, here we are. A long-awaited episode. We're going to talk about a couple of things. Some previews of these games we've got coming up this evening, as well as potentially tomorrow, potential national championship matchups. We'll talk a bit about how the college football playoffs have gone. And then also, I had a couple of you guys, and by a couple, I wanted the league to do it, but only 7 responses came in, but they're valuable responses of actually 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Okay, 9 responses of a little questionnaire I called the jury of their peers. I want to hear, with a case of anonymity, what people think about their experience in season 1. So we'll talk a bit about that, but let's go ahead and take a look at the college football playoff bracket that occurred. So, if you missed the conference championship round, some really, really good games. South Carolina was able to defeat Texas, making it kind of tying their record to 1-1 on the year, but a big win, a big run. South Carolina has been red hot, and they're playing tonight, and that'll be interesting to see. I think maybe even the favorite at this point. So SEC championship will go to him. Notre Dame was in as an independent. Ole Miss beat King. That was an interesting game. A lot of criticism of that game against King. If you watched, somewhere around 30 of 30-something passes were under 5 yards. So it'll be interesting to see how we'll talk about that game and all the things. But nonetheless, we joke with Khalil, but an impressive season from Ole Miss. Their only 2 losses came, I think, might have been at the hand of South Carolina. I'd have to go check real quick. We'll recap there, and then he lost to Penn State early on a missed field goal. So a fantastic back at the half of the season for Ole Miss. Clemson, Clemson was one of my dark horse guys on the year. Started a little bit slow. Did lose the initial matchup to UNC, but then things kind of started rolling, and he started having some impressive games. And then he played Allen like the last regular season game of the year and got completely smoked. And it was like, okay, well, maybe there's the momentum for him. But nope, Clemson turned around, was able to beat UNC for the ACC championship. And then, as we see here, beat Georgia in a close matchup. And then they hung tight with Texas for a bit. Eventually, the Longhorns roster was able to, and Orange Punch were able to kind of take over that football game. Good defensive play. And then the Pac-12 championship was unreal. We'll talk about that. Actually, it's been a while, so some of you guys did not see what happened in this Pac-12 championship. So we're gonna go pull that up. Actually, let's just go ahead and pull up all of the games. I have the screen available for us. Why are we not using this? So conference championship week. So we talked about ACC. Game Clemson kind of was able to pace that. North Carolina's a good roster, but real struggle there. Yep, this game was a fun one, a battle, but again, it was Ole Miss that was able to put together a good game. 6 touchdowns, 481 passing yards, but this right here, 91% completion percentage. He went 42 for 46, and a lot of that was through the air, quick throws. So it'll be interesting, again, to see for that matchup tonight. Big Ten Championship, Oklahoma put a beating. Joey has absolutely, showed up this year. Big wins throughout the season. Big. He beat Warren early. That's, it's a big roster matchup, but beat Ohio State and then put a beat down here on Penn State. So 7-1 in the conference, and he had Austin quitting at halftime. I don't think I've ever seen that in a conference championship game. Pac-12, this is the game. Look at this. So 70-63. Let's take a look at some of these stats. So UCLA threw for 438, 4 touchdowns, and then rushed for over 200 yards on the ground, 194 with Javian Thomas and 3 touchdowns. So you would be thinking, wow, 7 touchdowns, a 200-yard rusher, and a 400-yard passer. That was the most impressive offense, right? No. 737 passing yards, 8 touchdowns, 2 interceptions. Did not run the ball all that much. Raleek Brown with his he's 95 speed. He's not 99 like he was last year, but still 185 yards and a walk-off bomb wheel route with 12 seconds to go. Catches it, breaks 2 tackles, and walks into the end zone with 3 seconds left on the clock. They win 70-63, guys. Look at the fourth quarter box score. 60 points alone. Unreal. Absolutely unreal. And then we talked about the SEC championship. This was a good game. South Carolina has certainly, again, figured some stuff out. So kind of back to the bracket. So wanted to highlight that before we hopped into this. Of course, starting off the matchup here, South Carolina just able to really, just offense. Really just offense. Sellers, solid game. It's so difficult to deal with Nick Harbor. This is a guy who is amongst the top in yards this year. He's obviously a physical specimen. Warren, I don't want to say Warren didn't stand a chance, but that, just the valiant effort to even be there with that roster in comparison. So Nebraska, Oklahoma, this one was a good game. I don't know how much of this was dealing with a little bit of, obviously anytime you play Phil, it's kind of a hit or miss on if you're going to get some input delay, but nonetheless, Phil is a good user, talented user, so we're going to assume that this is just a well-matched, good matchup. There was a point in this game where Oklahoma was ahead by quite a bit. Let's see, 14 through the first, up by 3 at half, and then there. So, like the third, I remember looking at the third quarter, and I was like, okay, Oklahoma's up multiple scores. And then Nebraska has a 28-point fourth quarter. Raiola was one of the more impressive guys this season. We're not used to seeing that, especially from last cycle. But yeah, just across the board, a good game there. But Oklahoma was able to keep it moving. Clemson and Georgia, defensive battle. These are two of the top rosters and two, I wouldn't say up-and-coming users. Obviously, Travis new, and he's on the rise. And Jake is kind of having his prime, I would say, because he's, we've seen playoff runs before from Jake, but I think they've kind of fallen like flat early. But this was a time when, to win. Those are 3 impressive games to play in, and he's played well. And it'll be interesting to see how he continues to grow as Clemson. Texas A&M, this was a forced win. Penn State couldn't. I think he was a little discouraged after that, and of course he's no longer in the league with us, so it'll be Derek taking over Penn State. South Carolina, Notre Dame. Was a fun one to watch. South Carolina up quite a bit, but didn't outscore Notre Dame in the second half. I can't remember how much. It felt like, the 4 picks. It felt like I didn't get a chance to watch this game, like all of it live. I was at work. But it just kind of felt like South Carolina was able to kind of pace it for a bit. That's how it felt. I don't know if there was a point where Notre Dame really had like the ball with a chance to take the lead late or tie it up late, but either way, solid season. Anytime you start a true freshman quarterback like CJ Carr, you could see there good throw power, accuracy is solid, but still room to grow, and he'll be solid. Whereas, Sellers is kind of NFL ready right now, and of course, look, no surprise to see number 8 with a great day from that. Clemson and Texas, again, was just one of those, Clemson won the first quarter, second quarter, Texas starts to come alive. Second half was a little bit more balanced, but again, one of those, it's just kind of tough to play from behind against this Texas team. Really good on the completion, 80% completion percentage there. So, and then he could just attack you so many ways, whether it's the defense winning, or just running the football and stuff like that. So, this was a lesson in how to sell a game. ASU did not want to win this game. I feel like A&M really got away from his identity because he was down and spent a lot of time, even though the passing numbers are decent. And he did have, surprisingly, 2 100-yard rushers in this game. We were watching it, and there was a large chunk of this game where they quit running the ball. So it's like, whoa, he had 2 100-yard rushers. Why? Like, I just feel like if you have 2 100-yard rushers, your opponent shouldn't have enough time to put up 44 points. But that was not the case here. Not only that, P-Town actually, Look at almost 600 passing yards. In fact, across this game and the other game, he matched my quarterback's season stats. It's unreal. But with the ball, under 2 minutes to go, all they had to do inside the red zone, all they had to do was kick a field goal to go up two scores, and he threw a pick. He tried to throw a screen and it got picked off. Despite that, Arizona State was able to kind of come through. But I mean, P-Town has got to clear that up or would have had to clear it up. I forgot that this game already occurred, Arizona State versus Texas. And that's, I thought that was going to be the scenario, is you're not going to be able to do that against this Texas team. And as you can see here, kind of struggled to have that explosiveness out the gate, got himself down 21-10, and the rest of it was just trying to claw back. So surprisingly kept picks to a minimum, only got sacked once, but, as you can see here, unable to move the football on the ground. Texas is just going to be a team that can kind of I wouldn't say neutralize Jordan Tyson, but that's not the stats we're used to seeing from your Heisman winner. So whereas on the other side, running the football, 200-yard rushers. So ASU, back-to-back games giving up 200-yard rushers, didn't get lucky twice to win those games. So that'll be that. As for tonight, we've got South Carolina versus Ole Miss. They played earlier this season. Let's go rehash what happened before. Not look at the Ole Miss. Hey, we went 10-3. Don't hate me. So yeah, this was one of their losses on the year. But this was a really good game, if I recall. Simmons did not throw many picks on the year. Despite having 3 picks, still an impressive completion percentage. South Carolina neutralized a little bit. So these guys, these are these are 2 of the top 5 users in the league, in my opinion. So South Carolina didn't have any success running the ball. In fact, they didn't really run the ball much against each other at all. And really the answer will be, can he limit Nick Harbor? Last time he limited Nick Harbor and gave up 200-yard receivers. These guys are playing their best football right now. I would say if there's an issue, if there's maybe where can you nitpick and find the differences, it's that Ole Miss has played. I would say he played Oklahoma. I won't say that that's easy. Joey's had a really good year. He did play King in the conference championship, so that's a good matchup. But before that, he's played like 5 straight user games. So I do worry maybe a little bit of rust. But those are 2 pretty competitive games to come in and have. So I don't know if I have a favorite tonight. I feel like from a roster standpoint, Ole Miss is in a better position to control the game, should he? But he doesn't run the football all that much. And that's the problem. You really don't want to be in a scenario where you are, I just don't think you want to be in a scenario where you have to run the football. Not unless he plays Lacey, not a lot of speed here. But I just don't think you're going to beat Allen by getting in a throwing contest with Sellers and stuff like that. So making every possession count and that kind of thing. So, all right, let's cut to now the Jury of Their Peers content that came out. I asked a handful of questions, and there's some answers from your league mates. Some anonymous, some a little bit less anonymous because they gave away information about themselves. So we'll start. We'll just go through all the answers on each of the questions. So who was the toughest offense you faced this year, and why? The first submission was South Carolina - Lenore Sellers. I don't think anybody needs to be convinced otherwise. That quarterback is extremely difficult to bring down, and just the amount of plays that can be extended and the ball getting weapons, pair that up with the defensive user like Allen, and it's going to be dominant. The next answer is Ole Miss, without an answer, but they did say Ole Miss. So somebody certainly did not like dealing with the Ole Miss, so it'll be fun. That's the first 2 answers are the matchup tonight. Here is an answer. I have to say Georgia. I just didn't have any answers. His ability to run the ball at will was defeating, and he had some crafty throws to get Delp open. I kept fearing the deep ball to Branch, and he really only made 1 or 2 mistakes on offense. So Georgia getting a shout out with just how diverse, difficult to beat they are. Next answer, South Carolina. Sellers and Harbor were just hard to stop. Damned if I do, damned if I don't, right? And not only that, a pretty decent running back. So when he did super commit to that, Allen knows how to adjust. Here's a new one. Florida. Willie just knows how to read the defense and adjust his plays to take advantage. And Florida, despite kind of having a disappointed back half of the season, was ranked number 1 in the country at one point this year. So certainly a tough team, and it's not the first time that he's going to. In fact, the next answer, Florida, Willie, crazy good at QB that never goes down on first contact, crazy weapons to attack deep and underneath, and a good user who excels at improvising on the fly. So Willie getting his flowers. Next is Texas, just doesn't make mistakes. Texas just doesn't make mistakes. Here's a shout out, UCLA, Eeyore. Play action had me in a blender. DBs got exposed watching the ball in the backfield. I agree. In fact, my early season loss because 2 times on third down, on third and short, I decided to bring pressure packages and try to play the run. Play action deep ball with the 97 throw power. Nico burned me for touchdowns twice, and those were the touchdowns that beat me. Texas, well-rounded gameplay, good play call variety, and attacks all parts of the field. So obviously some really good rosters on here and some top quarterbacks, but shout out to like UCLA getting some love there from probably a Pac-12 guy because nobody pays attention to us. All right, who was the toughest defense you faced and why? So Texas, road atmosphere, and everyone on his front seven has extender beating abilities. So I imagine that might be Florida. There's only 2 guys out here that have extender abilities that are relevant. Texas A&M got a scrappy, and I'm going to add to this. Texas A&M King is a defensive coach, in real life. He's a defensive first coach. So it is no surprise that with a roster like that, he is able to replicate. NC State was extremely difficult to deal with. He understands blitz replacement. He understands concepts. He understands how to disguise coverages and how to get to the ball. And also the biggest thing is just he's probably one of the quickest guys in the league to pick up on tendencies, right? I don't think I've seen him give up an RPO bubble more than one time in a game. He does not let that happen. The next answer, while Georgia completely wrecked me, I think you're giving away who this one is. This is my answer. The toughest defense I played this year was SMU. I was on the road. He ran a lot of match coverages, a lot of cover 9, and I just don't really play enough cover 9 to where I have clear answers, while also not really having the receiving core I think I can to go out there and just feel confident to sling it. So I had to resort to some real mobile quarterback stuff and grind out runs, and this was a 17-10 game. So shout out to Doom. Excited to see him next season. Would have had a chance to play him again in the bowl game, but he got busy. So toughest defense was probably LSU is the next answer. Less about the defense itself, more about home field advantage. Was my first away game against a user, and I was shook. I threw 6 interceptions. So Penn State gets their first shutout. Said, felt like I was being suffocated. Manipulated my reads with great user movement. Not only that, he comes out in a lot of 3-4 baseline, as well as a lot of cover 0 dropping into coverage. And if you are not comfortable reading post-snap coverages, it is very difficult to deal with. And I took a loss to Penn State this year. Didn't really feel it was because of that per se, but Austin is always a difficult play. It sucks to see that he's going to be stepping away. Here's one. Clemson pitch ass. Peter Woods was in my ass all night long. That's I think that might be best. Alabama. Interesting. Alabama getting some love. Instant pressure all game long. Washington CPU. I think Ahard. I think we found Ahard's submission here saying that Washington CPU said. And then another shout out to Penn State. The 3-4 baseline look is tough to get pre-snap against. So next question was, who was the most unique play style of your opponents this year? Going from the bottom to the top this time. Penn State's defense, we talked about it a bit, but yes, playing Penn State's defense is just really confusing, and it'll throw you off. UCLA, not original, but it's different than everybody else's right now. That old school tight formation stretch, good play action, you don't see it much, and if you don't come correct against Digga, you can really he can beat you. And he can adjust. We're gonna give Pete Thomas flowers. This guy scored 63 points with UCLA against one of the top teams in the country right now. So now UCLA can do it. Somebody said probably Nano, Wisconsin, very run oriented, and having to deal with Nano's power run scheme is certainly difficult, especially if you are getting any kind of that delay we've talked about with our EU counterparts. If you're late to a gap or stuff like that, like he could probably pick it apart. Somebody said SMU Doom committed to the run game before blocking the patch and made it work with lots of good RPO action. So I can't quite remember what I was going through. I was playing him. I don't think I got a whole lot of that, but yeah. Some shout out to Doom getting mentioned a couple times for some tough defense and some unique play. Here's another shout to Wisconsin. Lots of running sprinkled in with lots of misdirection to keep you on my toes. Yeah, you better have a custom playbook with all your 4-3 and 3-4 formations when you play Wisconsin. So I said probably Utah. The option game isn't something I've seen a bunch of. Shout out to whoever said that. Yeah, the Utes. We had to make it work, and by make it work, we had to do some weird stuff, a lot of RPO draws, a lot of weird option things, really just trying to find any weakness because, we don't have that kind of ability to air raid. Somebody said Penn State and that he is extremely committed to the short passing game. This is me. 17 play drives, 14 play drives of disciplined dink and dunk football were extremely tough to deal with. And my perspective is that, I played UCLA. I played A-Hard, who's got like really good trips passing schemes, and he's always been good. But Penn State in that, man, he was completely content with the quick throw, the open throw. At the end of the day, you have to find the open throw, and he did that. And while I get frustrated, to legit have a 17-play drive with no mistakes is difficult. There's not a lot of guys that are going to make 17 good reads on a drive. And then some people said no, none, nobody. There's absolutely some unique schemes out here. I mean, first of all, nobody said it, but shout out Ricky running the wishbone over there in Pitt. So, unlocking some interesting stuff. Next question. Who is your favorite team to watch on streams and why? Utah, just to see him rage about things that beat his defense. Yep, Finn, just always entertaining, assholes. Next answer. I watched a lot of South Carolina. Watching Sellers work was wild. Willie is a clear choice due to rage, but I also like watching the mind game. So King, Warren, and Danny are fun watches as well. So I said I've liked watching Alabama and their surge late season, rep the SEC. P-Town, that man wreaks havoc and is always fun to watch. We've had many a watch party during P-Town games of us freaking out. In fact, we were doing it against Texas. We were doing it when they had the A&M game. We were doing it when P-Town is must-watch television. UNC Warren, the high-level skill on both sides of the ball, constantly using unique pre-play adjustments. His streams are like going to school sometimes. All right, shout out to the UNC boys. Anyone that can sling it, which is half the league. Finn for the crash outs. ASU, thrive by the pass, die by the pass. Okay. What was the best game you watched this season? No, some of the games came after. I think the best game of the year has got to be... Man, there's a couple. I mean, if you want to say that most intense, craziest game, how is this happening right now? I would say that ASU UCLA game. But let's shout out some other ones here. Notre Dame versus USC, right? USC had him up 24-3 or 27. It was a blowout. Notre Dame came all the way back and was able to win that game. So crazy comeback. Somebody said CPU versus Oregon. Here's another one: UCLA versus Washington CPU. We had a Discord call for that one. That was an insane one where the Washington CPU had not one but two jump balls late in the fourth quarter where they caught it. So 14 points on just literally the worst, shittiest one-on-one jump ball throw and ag catch ever. I said user versus user. Florida versus LSU was extremely wild. It did disconnect, so that sucked. And UCLA versus Oregon, Pac-12 at night was a banger, man. They were trading blows, and then UCLA throws a double-covered ball vertical on the right side. He catches it, puts them in field goal position to win. Somebody said I thought the UNC Clemson game was a banger. That was the original one, not even the conference championship. Florida versus Florida State. Pest pulled out a win against Florida, kept the season alive at the time. Tennessee versus Wisconsin was a fun one. Cam versus Nano for sure. Texas, South Carolina was interesting. That was entertaining. That was the 21-28 win by Texas, then later avenged. Somebody down said ASU versus Oregon. So yeah, some good ones there. 2 questions or 3 left. What 2 users do you think are the favorites for the national championship? We've got South Carolina, Texas. Okay. Texas A&M, UNC. Okay, they're gone, but good ones. I said I think my favorites are Texas and Ole Miss. So that dream is still alive. King and Allen. Allen's alive. Sol and A-Rap, but Khalil. Somebody also said Sol and A-Rap stacked rosters and great users. So shout out the roster, Carrie. Texas and P-Town were somebody's favorite. They just played, so good call there. Orange Punch and P-Town. Texas, and I don't know. Texas and UNC. So yeah, a lot of Texas who will be playing in a national championship. And a lot of guys seeing Allen and Khalil. So he's your dark horse. Texas A&M was one guy's dark horse. If South Carolina can get in, he has a win over Ole Miss and play Texas close. So that was my guess. I also said Tamu, Texas A&M. Another stacked roster. Texas. Somebody said Texas was a dark horse. Come on now. Ole Miss, Khalil. Okay, King made a self shout out. Juice. Somebody said that Juice was a dark horse. Yeah, kind of quiet because he didn't get the conference championship game. Just kind of slid in there. South Carolina was the last one. Okay, so there was what was the best game you watched this season was what people were talking about. Then the last question was, what do you think the game of the year was? What was the best game you played this season? Sorry, so Florida versus LSU because DJ was cooking. Okay. Beating Clemson. We hate Clemson where I'm from. That's Allen, so I think that's Allen. My best game personally was beating number 1 ranked Florida. That was fun, and then there's a good defensive battle versus SMU. Georgia says Utah. He did. He walked into my house and beat the brakes off of me. Somebody said Wisconsin because it wasn't raining. I think that might be Cam. Cam DM'd me quite a bit. Tennessee user talking about the rain. FSU and his game versus Florida started a no ability true freshman on the road, threw for 350 and 3 tuds. OU versus Indiana, Joey says that his game where he made the Indiana user quit was a good one. Oh, he said King, but then he said watch out for me if I make it. Talking about dark horse Joey. Hey Joey, there you go. Good stuff. King didn't call himself out. I'm sorry. Somebody said Texas A&M played a bunch of games over the years, always good games. Got him this time. Had me last cycle with the run game. I think that might be. I think hard. I think the Oregon Texas A&M game happened, and that was a fun one. Yep. And then Ohio State, their best game was against Penn State. Only had 1 loss coming in and had a unique defense, and Ohio State was able to win that one. Unfortunately, their loss to Wisconsin kept them out of opportunity to play for a Big Ten championship. So, all right, cool. So that is that content. Thank you for everybody who filled it out. It's always cool to hear what everybody else's perspective of the league is because that's what it's about. Big game tonight. Make sure you're watching for that. And we will have plenty of content to preview the national championship. And as we get closer to next season, make sure you're looking out for the announcements channel for new rules or more information on how we're going to do the off-season schedule, conference stuff, and all that. So you guys have a good one. See you next time.